Cooking with Jazza and Jen is filmed in front of a live studio audience, and today's episode is sponsored by Gamers Grass.
Welcome back. It's tabletop time. I'm Jazza.
And I'm Jen.
And today we're going to be, well, I haven't actually told you what we're doing.
I've no idea what we're doing, yeah. We're cooking up something good though.
Yes, we are, and boy do I have a surprise for you. So I told you to bring your latex. I got some silicone here. I got some cups. I got a tub. You've bought your models.
Yes.
And I've got some bases. Now, what models are we working with here today?
Okay, so we have some Games Workshop Ideneth Deepkin, which are pretty cool, like sea elf looking things. And I've got some other models from Heroes Infinite, who are kind of similar vibe. Chicks on fish, dude on horse.
Sounds like a good time, Jen.
That's it.
So, I had this crazy idea. Only a couple of weeks ago, I used silicone for the first time. And knowing that you can make a mold out of pretty much anything that is liquid that turns solid, I thought, you know what, clear resin base mold for water effects.
Ooh.
We're gonna fill these gaps. Would you do the honors? I'm wearing my latex.
That's okay.
It's latex. Don't be weird. I'm going gaffer tape because it's adhesive, obviously, all the way around. And if we do that, it's gonna create a seal that then, with a little bit of neat trimming around, is gonna create a completely flat bottom.
Okay.
All right, epic tape montage. So the theory is these won't move when I pour in silicone now that they're glued down. Molds release. It is a very exact process, probably. So I'm just gonna pour white. I think that like if I go up to there, maybe there. So I'm just gonna go boop. I reckon that's 1 to 1.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Yeah.
Mixing montage, if you please.
Mixing.
The trick is to not drink it. I have learned kinesthetically. I'm gonna try and get to the edges first because I want it to go under the lips of all of these things, and I also wanna try and have all the bubbles work out as we go. I think this sets fully and workably in about 20 minutes. So we will use the magic of editing to make that right now. The silicone is set. So now, basically anything you pour into this mold should make these shapes.
Okay.
And it's just removable like so.
Hey.
Just get a little bit of UV resin in theory, pour that in there, spread it around just so it's nice and flat. All I'm trying to do is cover that surface.
Whoa.
So that's solid. All right, beachy scoop, goop, poop. So this is then submerged inside the water base. Now the idea is you could build up terrain levels. You could have some mounted or even have it like rising like with cork above the water. We can put some tufts and maybe some rocks and whatever. Let's grab a few bits and bobs.
Okay, let's see what we got. I was thinking these coloured ones kind of look like coral a bit more.
Oh, that's a great idea.
So maybe we give that a shot.
Put that in there. Right, this is still the dabble, but already, like, if this works, this could be really cool. I'm gonna use our UV. Oh, I mean, come on. If you do a base trim right up to the edges of where, like, that ground comes up to, that's pretty cool. That's a double. Decent double.
Oh. Oh, sure. So after experimenting with Jazza, it was time for me to finally start making my own bases. This first batch would be my tester before moving on to my final centerpiece. I had a plan a while ago to use this weird spongy stuff I'd found. I thought I'd just chuck them on and give it a go and see what it looks like. Once I started putting them on the bases, I realized it wasn't gonna quite work the way I wanted it to. However, after fiddling with these things for a while, I thought it'd just be way easier to use the Gamers Grass tufts for small coral formations. Overall, I learned a lot from my dabble and I was keen to start my final centerpieces. And here they are. Here's my little fishy dudes in all of their awesome glory. I'm pretty happy with how these bases turned out. They look pretty good. There's a couple of things I'd like to change though, especially with the way the black on the bases look. But for my dabble, I'm pretty impressed. The concept works and I'm ready to just dive into it. So Jazza and I had a big talk about the bottom of these bases. We both weren't really happy with how it turned out, but he had a solution. He printed me some bases out of acrylic and they work really, really well. I got got 2 different sizes from him, and I'm gonna put these into my silicone mold and make a second mold to pour into. I just poured in the silicone the same way we'd done it previously, creating that beautiful bubblegum color that was just too hard to resist. We left this for 24 hours for it to fully dry, and then I could pop the bases on and start putting some texture on. I just used the same texture as last time, beautiful sandy color that just worked so well. But this time I wanted to create some peaks and some dips in the actual sand itself. So I laid and fluffed it up as much as I could, and I applied 3 layers of this just to make sure that no cracks or seams sort of showed through, and to really give those depths and peaks. Once that had fully dried, I used 2 different kinds of sand just to again kind of bring that depth into the sand and really highlight the texture on top. I really wanted the bottom of the bases to look like the way they do in the ocean, how it's got the different ripples of light pulling through the sand. Once the texture had all dried, I just gave the rims of the bases again a nice black coat just to make sure all of that sand texture was off when I did my resin pour. Now it was finally time to start putting stuff onto the actual bases themselves. Again, I was really happy with the way the cork turned out, so I'm just gonna use the same method, but this time I'm gonna make them more brown. After doing a little bit of research, I found that ocean rocks tend to have more of a brown color to them, and sometimes have the light gray like lichen or moss on top of it. So I decided to go with this method instead. Once they were all dry, I just super glued them onto the bases, and it was finally time for my plant life. As mentioned before in the video, we had used Gamers Grass products, and they are a sponsor for today's video. Now with the dabble, I'd used a couple of different things, but the Gamers Grass was just so good. I had to go back to it, and I had to use it for these bases. So to start off with, I needed something really small and tiny to get those little bits of seaweed into my bases. One of their products is the tiny dry green 2mm tufts, and they just worked perfectly for the little lichen sea life that's at the bottom of the ocean floor. Along with this, they also had another larger size of tuft that was this beautiful browny red color, which was a little bit bigger than I was hoping, so I decided to cut these up to look like tiny little sea urchins that were sitting around the bottom of the bases. Once I got the basic plant life down, it was time to start adding the coral reef. Now, Gamers Grass has this amazing range of alien grass, which come in these beautiful colors. They have an amazing range of different colors, but I chose the alien blue, alien pink, and the alien fire tuft for this project. One of my favorite products from Gamers Grass is these laser cut plants. There's just something about them that looks super cool, and they can fit into any type of diorama or scene that you're trying to create. They're really versatile, and they come in a range of colors and types as well. There's really an endless choice of possibilities when it comes to these things. So Gamers Grass has a range of different products which you can check out on their website. From tufts, bases, laser cut plants, flowers, the possibilities are truly endless. So thank you to Gamers Grass for sponsoring this video, and I hope you guys enjoy using their products just as much as we do. Once all of my plant life was finally put in place, it was time to do my resin pour. Again, I used the same pour that we did last time, the Woodland Scenics Deep Pour. To my resin pour this time, I just added a tiny bit of green and blue into the actual mixture. If this wasn't deep enough or there wasn't much color, I had a theory of how we could add more later. But for now, I just wanted to do my resin pour and then leave it for 24 hours to cure. Now that the resin had finally cured on top, it was time to apply some different types of techniques and textures on top of the waves. When I did my dabble originally, I used the Water Ripples texture paint from Woodland Scenics on top of the bases. I was really happy to use this again. It just gave a lot of texture to the flat resin on the bases. So the bases themselves were looking pretty good, and it was time to finally add the models that I would be using in this video. Now David printed me these beautiful models from Raging Heroes. Now the Selkie I knew would just sit on his base nicely, but the fish is gonna be a bit of a challenge. I really wanted it jumping out of the wave, and I wasn't sure how to go about it. Then I remembered we had a previous video that we did on something exactly the same. When Jazza made his environment video here on Tabletop Time, he used a couple of techniques that I'm gonna actually follow today and use myself. So to start start off with, I needed to find a stand the fish could actually sit on. Luckily enough, again, Gamers Grass came to the rescue. I actually used one of their clam packs as the plastic that the fish would be sitting on. I just cut this out to roughly the right size and was able to sort of hide it behind the fins too, so I was super stoked with how this was turning out. Once I was happy with the placement, it was time to get out the UV resin. If you've watched the previous video, you'll know how much trouble Jazza had trying to get the droplets off of his model. My goodness, he was not lying. This was an absolute feat to try and do. I managed to get a little bit of it on camera, but a lot of it just missed and went onto the base. I also made sure to build up some of that UV resin at the bottom of the base too, to make it look like bubbling water and that the fish was really shooting out of its base. I also applied just a gloss varnish around the bottom of the fish in the selkie just to give it that really wet look. With the UV resin finally cured, I just felt like the bases needed a little bit more color to them. They were looking a little bit flat and I felt like they just needed a bit more. Luckily enough, Dave is absolutely skilled in an airbrush, so he offered to airbrush them for me. He used a mixture of Copic marker ink. He used a green and a blue mixed together and just lightly sprayed this on top of the bases. This method meant that it was translucent, but also could give the bases the color that I was looking for. I was really happy with the way this turned out. Once the airbrush stuff had finally dried, it was time to paint on just those white bubbles on top. Unlike last time, this time I used a gloss varnish and the acrylic itself to just give it a nice transition into that bubble effect. And with a few spots of bright white for just that little touch of a highlight, these bases were all done and ready to show. So here they are in all their glory, and I am so excited for the way that these look. I never thought that an idea I had in the back of my head would actually be possible, and I'm just thrilled with the way that these turned out. I cannot wait to make my Ideneth Deepkin army. These guys are gonna look so good with actual water resin bases. But there's so many different potential ideas, like building a board that's underwater or a coral reef or rock pools or something really cool like that. That would be amazing. Let us know if you think that that's a really cool idea that you guys would like to see. Again, as always, a big thank you and shout out to our Patreons who make our videos possible. It's with your support that we can continue doing what we love doing, and it's just a huge joy. Thank you so much for all of your support and love. And also big thank you to the sponsor of this video, Gamers Grass. I had an absolute joy using your products and I cannot wait to use them again. Again, if we make an underwater board, I just would want to fill it with all the coral reef and all of the plant life. It would just look sick. I don't know, maybe I could put like a scuba diver or a chess or some pirates. Yeah, that could be really cool. All right, I'm gonna leave it there.